The hero suddenly remembered Master Alvin Sam's words, told Julius to listen, and asked if the greatest power was strong magic or an invincible army. His answer was girls, because no one can resist them. At first the hero blamed it on drunken delirium, but now he wasn't so sure. The elf girl let him rest against her. He believed they were invincible. He really enjoyed it. The second girl grinned and said she would take him to heaven. It was a pleasure because resisting them was impossible. The girls talked, one instructing the other to tie him up as quickly and as tightly as possible. The taller girl said they were leaving. The second one pulled a cart with the hero tied up behind him. He couldn't tell if he was actually being kidnapped. The hero blamed the foolish prince for everything. 3 years earlier, the kingdom of Zake was at war with neighboring countries, and the success of its formidable first army, led by the crown prince, had put the war on the verge of victory. Victory was already within reach, and someone in the palanquin called out to ask about the pursuit. Seated at the table was Ariel Zwick, third prince and commander of the kingdom of Zwick's second army. The commander was irritated that the court magician voiced his opinion to the prince, but Julius kept insisting the chase was a decoy. The magician warned that they were in a rainy night forest with such bad conditions that pursuing them further could be dangerous, and the prince told him to shut up. Irritated, the prince said sorcerers were scouts, not tacticians. Julius shouted that the prince was mad and trying to ruin a battle that could be won. Julius Cassel, the court magician, was the hero. The prince shouted that the magician must not dare to doubt him as the future king. The magician persisted, saying it was only his opinion and that he was sure it was a trap. The prince insisted that this was their chance. Refusing to listen, the prince called the magician a war-weary fool who was weakening their fighting spirit. The surrounding warriors began calling the hero a pathetic commoner, and if not for the royal court, he would have been beheaded for criticizing the royal family. Julius thought about how he had been scouting, acting as a messenger, and sabotaging things almost always alone. He asked the warriors whether their reputation truly mattered to them, and they grew angry. Julius said the soldiers' lives should matter more now than the fight for the throne, even though the crown prince has a better chance, and this angered the third prince. An ally on the hero's side said he wouldn't be in such a hurry if he were you. An enraged Arioff swung his sword, striking the chessboard. Pointing his sword at the hero, he said he was done tolerating him and ordered him to return home immediately. The hero saw him as a complete freak, convinced the truth was on his side. The prince shouted for the magician to leave and called Julius a dirty scavenger. Convinced the prince was brainless, the hero blamed him for their likely defeat. He asked if the prince was crazy and was told to shut up. The hero still wasn't sure whether the prince understood where this was heading. Julius sighed and warned the prince that the enemy still followed them, though Julius no longer cared. The prince laughed and told the hero to get away, warning the hero he would be court-martialed for desertion when he got home. The hero left while they laughed at him and said that at best he would not get a job. Smiling, he said he would watch to see if they were acquitted at the tribunal and wished them luck in battle. From the palanquin, they shouted at him angrily as the hero stuck out his tongue and walked away. In the kingdom of Zwick, sorcerers have been looked down on since time immemorial. Strong, sword-wielding men are seen as heroes, while sorcerers were regarded as mysterious, enigmatic figures. His teacher had warned that fools can use swords but cannot understand magic, and the hero believed him as always. A passing warrior asked Julius if he was going on reconnaissance, and Julius said he was going home, which surprised the warrior, and the hero used dimensional magic. Given the weather, the hero thought the soldiers would not last until dawn. They were cold, but the elite would not leave their work to chance. Remembering the prince's insult, the hero ground his teeth in anger and sent him away, yet the kingdom of Zwick still won the war. The enemy used the terrain to ambush the second army, which suffered a crushing defeat. This was only the start of the hero's torment. The prince shouted that Julius was to blame for everything. He cried that it was all the magician's fault, saying the magician had fled the enemy of his own free will, and they lost the scouts because they did not notice the enemy ambush. Pointing at the magician, he said the prince had done nothing wrong and that it was all the magician's fault. The foolish prince blamed Julius for everything, and Julius couldn't understand why his military pride had vanished. He was angry at the judge because of the judge's royalist tendencies. The judge said he was removing Julius from his position as court mage and ordering him transferred to the potion factory. The master could not help Julius with this, but because of him the hero was spared the death sentence and his elite court magician was sent to the potion factory. 3 years later, the hero worked in an unhygienic place with rats scurrying around. Someone called from Julius' direction that he had decided to stop thinking about it and concentrate. 3 men stood there. The tallest asked how long the hero would keep at it. The second ordered him to come over immediately. The third said he could not finish it in a day. The hero sighed at the annoying alchemists. Julia's simple potion recipe uses raw water and materials taken from dungeon demons with strong life force, all placed in a huge tank and dissolved with magic to create an essence, and the hero is handling the preparation. Other alchemists continued his work, creating a restoration potion. More than 200 alchemists worked around the clock in 3 shifts for a meager wage. They shouted at the hero whether he could hear them or not, telling him not to ignore them and to work harder. The hero thought it absurd that this was an important state enterprise and saw it all as stupid, like throwing money away. They called Julius a fool, wondering what he meant and why an ordinary magician would try to act clever, and a third said Julius was not an alchemist and should not blabber as if he knew what he was talking about. The hero said he noticed they were overly verbose. The tall alchemist told him to hurry to avoid working overtime. The hero's master says Zake's alchemists are corrupted by industrialization, and this is what happens when people go bad. The hero said if anything went wrong, they would blame him, and as the only one who had done it, he pointed out the job was simple, but no alchemist could do it, so he believed it was clearly the prince's merit. The alchemist said the hero had no right to be here and should be proud of their work, and the hero grew angry and mentally told them to be quiet, already furious and determined not to let this place destroy him, when a voice from the side asked what they were all doing here. Ree, the factory manager and one of the alchemists, called out that Julius had been added again, asked the hero how far he had come. The hero said he was about 80% finished. Then Ree, acting as director, ordered him to hand over the raw materials immediately, and the hero asked if he was serious. Henry ordered him to move, and he had to obey. The potion was 20% less effective, so he refused to accept responsibility, and the alchemists left gloating and called him a former genius. Henry asked the hero if he agreed, and the hero said they would screw up someday. The man warned that if Julius wanted to return, he needed to be more accommodating. The hero asked how to handle complaints filed against them. Henry said it did not matter and told him to focus on mass production. Julius said it would cost the lives of adventurers and soldiers. The man said they had enough supplies to replace them. The hero winced and asked again. The hero clenched his fists as he realized what the nobles really thought of them. Henry urged Julius to be reasonable and reminded him that Julius owed Henry for hiring a traitor. Someone was eavesdropping on them. The man reminded Julius that Gon wanted to help him, but Julius did not understand what he meant. Honori said the hero was good but not trying hard enough and did not want to die like this, yet if he tried he could get his title of court magician back. The hero still did not believe this hell would end. The man said it would only happen if the prince allowed it. On his way out, he told Julius to work hard and get rid of the rats. The hero felt his life was cursed. When the hero picked up an apple core, he realized a thief rat had moved into the factory. A thief rat is a low-class monster that is omnivorous, disgusting, and steals food. They had wondered where they were stealing so much food from. Sometimes it seemed to him they lived better than people. A sound came from the closet, and the hero was frightened. The hero approached the closet trembling and said it was a surprise to find a large rat inside, then used magic to tell the rat not to be offended. When he opened the closet, a girl inside began to squeak like a mouse. The hero froze, unsure what it was. Guantalabrins are dungeons run by the kingdom of Zake, where fortune-seeking adventurers gather and bring the country great wealth and resources by exploring the labyrinths. In the Great National Labyrinth Exploration Project, recovery potions are a strategic commodity and a high-demand item that brings wealth to the nation. The hero kept wondering who the girl was while she imitated a mouse's squeak. The staff was held close to his forehead. The elf cast a paralysis spell on the hero. Falling to the ground, he trembled, stunned that she was a magician. She said it was not funny. She was bored because she had to do the same trick again. The hero managed to sit up and asked what she meant, but the paralysis still held him. Smiling, she told him not to try because he would not be able to move. They called from the cleanse side. The second girl approached them and asked how things had gone. Glenn told her sister she thought it had been a great success and that they had everything they needed. The man didn't understand what that meant. She hugged him, apologized, and said he just needed to be patient. The girls talked about hiding. The hero did not know if they were serious. Clint, pushing the cart, said the kidnapping was a great idea. Yule finally realized they planned to steal him. This explains how the hero came to be here. A long time had passed since then. The paralysis had worn off, but magic still failed him. He feared they were going to kill him. Glenn noticed the man was already awake. The second girl climbed into the carriage, said she already knew the hero was resistant to all types of damage, and asked if he had come to his senses. Glenn replied that it looked like he had. The man was surprised that the two girls were his killers. Seeing their ears, he realized they were elves. The taller girl said it made sense, since he was a court magician and a promising target. Clem said they could not be too careful. The hero freed his mouth and shouted that he didn't know what they wanted, but they'd have to let him go if they didn't want trouble. They quickly covered his mouth with a hand and asked him to promise not to make a sound, or he would be in serious trouble. The girl asked if he understood her, but he was only thinking about how close she was to him. Julius asked whether they even knew who he was and said he was a court magician. The girl corrected him, saying he was a former court magician and that she felt sorry for him. She said he was clinging to his past glory, and that was pathetic. The man wondered what was going on with her. The second girl pulled Clem away from the guy, telling her to stop enjoying it, and when the girl wanted to object, Roger said there were no buts and that enjoying other people's suffering was wrong, so Clem looked away and said it wasn't like that. Clem trembled and said she just liked to see people suffer and that everyone did it, while the hero wiped his brow, thinking she was a real sadist and that no one did that. Raja said the hero must be struggling with the bracelets on his arms. Only now did the hero notice the silence bracelets on himself. Those bracelets block magic and are often used on servants. Now the boy understood why he could not use magic. They asked if the hero had any questions, and he asked who they were, whether this was a kidnapping, whether he was the target, and told them not to dwell on his past as the girls began whispering among themselves. At last they turned to him and introduced themselves as Maple and the Raja, saying they were beautiful elven spies. Clem insisted he was right about the kidnapping. The man looked skeptical, wondering what kind of weirdos had taken him and whether they really called themselves beautiful. Raja could tell from his face that he did not believe them. She showed him proof and he was shocked they had stolen the sphere, saying the director would probably be furious. The sphere is a crystallized form of high-density magic, used as an auxiliary power source for large-scale magical and alchemical devices, and is very expensive. The hero suggested this might close the factory. Clem giggled nearby. The girl gave him a thumbs up and said they were right to steal it from the person who had been tormenting him, and the hero agreed, then said she wasn't the one who did it because she had been tormenting him too. He remembered they called themselves spies and said they looked more like bar dancers. The girls said they didn't like Swike's clothes because they were too heavy and that those outfits were the usual dress in their kingdom, and the hero said, however, that the Swikes stole the kingdom's potion-making skills and called it a comedy act. Confused, the girls did not understand why he said that, and Gon replied that it was because he was not an alchemist but an elite magician, and they remained silent. Clem insisted they were not mistaken, and Raja said they'd watched the factory for a month to find the best alchemist, who was clearly Julius. Clem was pleased, saying the country's potion brewing was finished and had completely collapsed, and the hero thought she was rude. Julius said he had called himself a magician so they could make potions without him. Raja said it was no surprise he did not understand, since he likely thought the prince would keep him at the factory for a long time and leave him no time for anything. The hero was surprised. They seemed to know everything about him. Raja said it was true and he might not realize it, but Julius was actually the one running the whole factory. Too much magic was keeping it going. He denied it, saying it had nothing to do with him, that he didn't want to be around them or think about it, that he didn't care what happened to the factory, and asked where they were taking him. The Raja said they were taking him to Shambhala, the land of the desert elves. Never having heard of it, the hero doubted he would ever get there and did not even know where the desert was. Maple described a beautiful, sparkling oasis and could not wait to show it to him. The hero admitted he did not know what an oasis was. Raja wanted him to work in the very center of the country. She regretted that things had come to this. She approached him and said they did not want to make things worse and that he simply had to trust them. Believing them, the man agreed and told them to leave him alone. He had no idea how he'd ended up in this situation. Clean asked sarcastically why he was sad. The hero thought how strange their company was. Raja, the fluffy one, and Clean, the sadist. The Raja said everything was free, and the city head offered him his own workshop and an elf wife, saying this was much better than working for low wages in a factory. Clem said she didn't think the former elite mage would complain, and the man asked her to be quiet. He threw it off his shoulders and said he was already halfway to freedom from that hell. Clem sneered that he had done it by flirting with the factory director and had been close to going into the forbidden world with her. The hero shouted, cursing at her. Raja asked Clem to forgive her because she had not meant to do it. Raja explained that the city's leader would give him the details and that there was still time to ask. The hero said it was nothing and thought a short break would be enough before returning home, and Clem replied that he would not be able to return. The Raja said that based only on circumstantial evidence, it was clear he was a troublemaker who who refused to accept his disadvantaged position, so he took the most important things and ran away. The hero gave in and told them to take him wherever they wanted, and the Raja thanked him. Clem pulled out a bag and told him to climb in. When he asked what else it was for, she said the entrance to Shambhala was secret, and he sent her away saying he was a guest. He shouted that there should be no bags and no bullying because he was going to their country as a specialist and would not be put into a bag. Glenn reminded everyone this was a kidnapping, and even Raja, who had forgotten, remembered. The hero asked what was wrong, but he refused. Glenn drew his staff again and used paralysis magic. He fell and Maple wished him good night. Raja leaned over and said she had been watching his efforts for a long time, and now he could rest. The boy liked her sweet scent. Few people in the kingdom of Zake knew about Shambhala, and though it lay next door, no one even put it on the maps. Not even a former court magician knew that elves lived in the desert. Voices urged him to wake and asked if he was alive. He thought that if he did not wake, he would be finished. They whispered that if he did not wake, his face would be covered with kisses, and he felt that would be social death. The girl said she would count to 3 and began the countdown. He opened his eyes. A gloomy, hissing creature appeared in front of him. Startled, the hero screamed at the unknown creature, and the maple tree said it was a desert long-tailed rat and mocked him for fearing she would bite him, which was a shame, and he cursed the girl in his head and asked where they were. The girl replied that they were in Shambhala at the mayor's house. 2 people were walking toward them. Clen turned and told the gentleman that Julius had woken. The gentleman thanked Clen and said it was good that Julius was safe. Bowing to the hero in Shambhala, the man introduced himself as Shamshil, the city mayor. Smiling, he said he hoped the hero had enjoyed the journey with his beautiful daughters. Sarcastically, the hero said it was a great program, especially the old bag they put over his head. The man apologized for everything that had happened. The man looked reproachfully at his daughters and said he had warned them. Clinton said everything was fine with Yule if you think about it, that he was even happy, maybe a masochist. Yule shouted he was not happy. Yule said he was just glad they freed him and he could finally feel his hands. The man said that was good. Shamshil chose to be direct. Several girls entered the room. The hero had no idea what it meant. The man brought him wise, beautiful daughters from their people to satisfy his desires. The boy was surprised. The man asked which of them Julius would choose. Noticing the hero's surprise, the man asked whether he'd been told. The hero didn't know it was serious. Ken said she'd told him and that Julius was just delirious. Shimura said they wanted him to use his skills fully in their country, and in return they would give him a generous reward, a comfortable life, his own alchemical workshop, and a loving wife. Yes, the hero can choose a girl to his liking. Julius asked how anyone could talk about it with that look on his face. The man asked what the hero was really against and pointed out that the hero's wife had servants. The hero replied that only the nobility had servants and that he was a commoner. Shamshil did not know what to do then, and as one of the elves felt embarrassed while looking at Yuli. She blushed when he looked at her. The hero was surprised that they really wanted to marry a man. He got out of bed, sighed, and said that nothing could be done. The girls 10 stop. Bowing to the mayor, the hero apologized and said he was not an alchemist but the court magician. Julia confirmed it was true. Despite his daughter's claim, he had never made a potion, so he feared he could not help them. The man asked him to raise his head and said he had been told about it. Understanding Julius's doubts, the man said his daughters had never let him down, and when the hero noted the man seemed to have great faith in them, the man replied he was truly proud of the two. Raja said Julius could make an even better potion, and Clen said they had stolen the materials for it, so everything would be fine. The man asked the hero to stay. Shamshil insisted a new giant labyrinth had been discovered under Shambhala. The hero was stunned to hear about the labyrinth complex, because if it was true, they would have found a massive gold mine. The hero said it could even overthrow the Zake kingdom, which monopolizes the labyrinth trade, and the man asked whether Mr. Julius understood everything. The hero said that if it was true, they needed to be extremely careful. Clen didn't understand what they needed to be careful about. The hero said that 3 years ago Zwei had fought his neighbors over the labyrinth's riches. He warned that if they failed, the whole world would turn against them. The man agreed and said that was why he had a request for the hero. Shamshil needed the hero to brew a potion from Shambhala. Conquering the labyrinth is hard, and potions are needed to reach the treasures deep inside. Sacrifices help no one, but the labyrinth also provides potion ingredients, so brewing potions and exploring it will keep bringing riches. Time keeps moving. If Zweig's military discovers a labyrinth here, they will not stay quiet. Shambhala will be caught in the middle of the conflict. The leader wants to set everything in order before fighting begins. If the cycle of use takes place, the country can be protected. The leader admitted he knew it was disrespectful to his magical craft, but he still asked. Shamsal pleaded with the hero to become the alchemist who would save Shambhala, and the hero stuttered as he spoke about himself and alchemy. Grabbing the hero's hand, Raja begged him to help because they needed his help. Maple grabbed his other hand to ask for help, and he would help them because they chose him. The elves in the room immediately begged him for a chance. Sure that the labyrinth fever would reach the country and bring major change, the hero knew failure would cause trouble. It puzzled him that they would trust the future to a man who had never made a potion. Shamsal said that in his eyes the hero is a genius with powerful magic who can quickly assess a situation and act wisely. The hero not only calls himself a wizard, but is kind at heart, and the chief has heard he is sincere in his work. The chief said the most important thing was what his daughters had told him. He needed to know that some things are more important than fleeting wealth. The hero wondered what kind of foolishness had led a group of weirdos to kidnap him. The hero realized they understood him better than he understood them. He shouted that they themselves had started putting pressure on him and should not complain if nothing worked out, but the elves were already sure he would cope. The hero shouted that he didn't care, he wasn't an alchemist and would do what they wanted. Pointing to himself, he shouted that he was super elite, and joyful cries rang out around him. Turning to the chief, he said he did not need a wife, but the old man would not accept refusal, and Shamshal said he would take them anyway since he would need an assistant. Angered and spiteful, the hero said he wanted to take the two girls, the headman's daughters. They were shocked and did not understand what he meant. The leader asked whether the hero truly wanted his daughters, and whether that would be a problem, saying that explained why he avoided marriage, and the hero thought this would make the striker abandon his plan, but the striker agreed at once, and Klen could not believe he had chosen them. Amazed that both sisters agreed, the hero wondered if they had lost their minds. Shamsha laughed and said he would not accept a refusal at such a late stage because the hero had already proposed to his daughters, so it was no longer open for discussion, and the hero protested that it was absurd. The leader wanted Julius to show his determination to them. He asked everyone present if they had heard it, and they immediately said they had. The hero wondered what kind of parent he was. The hero shouted at the girls to ask if it was okay for them to marry a man, but they were no longer listening. Raja couldn't believe he had proposed to her, and Klen kept saying how excited she was. Raja asked if that meant they were already married, and Clem called him a child lover, which made him think they should have just said no. Julius gave in, told the chief they would talk about it later, and asked what was going on with the work. Shinshal called his daughters, told them they would help him from now on, and they asked him to give it to them. The sister said they'd be happy to work with him, and Maple again took the chance to insult the hero, leaving him unsure what to do. The girls showed him their country from above and explained it was the trading state of Shambhala, located at the center of the desert, with cities scattered across the oases, so it prospers from free trade across the desert. Soon a new branch of industry will emerge called the labyrinth complex. The hero was stunned by the view before him because he had never seen the horizon. The chief apologized and asked the hero to wait until evening before going to the workshop. The hero asked why. Shamsal felt awkward saying this, having just discovered that some details had been overlooked during the repairs. The hero did not object to looking around the city. Shamsal whispered to Raja, who cried out that the repair shop was in very bad condition and impossible to go to now. It did not even have a roof. The hero asked whether it was really that run down. An elf appeared before him, bowed, introduced himself as Slay, and said he was his secretary. The elf asked Julius to go and inspect Shambhala, and Julius agreed. With a smile, the hero asked to take the chance to escape, and the chief laughed, said it would be a problem, then ordered Maple to show him the city. The hero asked about her sister, and the sister said she would handle the workshop. Raja warned Klin not to embarrass the hero too much, and Klin simply said she would take care of it, which left the hero already scared. Shamsal said the wedding ceremony hadn't even begun, so he didn't have to worry. Yuli just insulted the old man and told him to shut up. Emerging from the shade, the hero immediately cried out at the heat, then turned and asked what kind of sun it was, and the maple tree replied that it was Shambhala. The girl said she dressed that way because of the heat, and the hero, dressed all in black, explained that Zake is a cold country. Walking through the city, Glenn warned him not to undress because the sun was at its peak, and it would be hard to get used to. Julius said they lived in a wonderful place and asked how they managed, and Glenn explained that desert elves handled the heat well, and the secret was their dark skin. She said he'd get used to it after a while. He asked whether that was true. The girl said the desert gets cool at night. The hero didn't think this place would be even a little cool. Maple asked him to buy some clothes, and the man agreed because he would rather be burned to the ground than become an alchemist. Suggesting they go to the main market, the girl said there was a good shop there. Then she asked whether the sun was hurting him. He shouted that it was, and she could see for herself. Teasing him, the girl asked how much longer he could hold out and said he was about to break. He told her to shut up and asked when he would change his clothes. Clan asked if he wanted to escape from the market, and Julius replied that he would die right away. So the girl laughed and said Julius was a very funny person after all, and the guy told her to keep quiet. They reached the main market, and the hero asked whether it was always this crowded. When the caravan returns, there are more people, she said. She asked him if he liked it. He said it looked acceptable and realized it was a trading city. The girl said his way of speaking made her feel good. The man said he felt like a tourist, but it seemed Clan was in Zake, and she added they were now in Shambhala's largest oasis, right in the heart of the country. Julius asked whether the city's mayor was the king. She said that would be great, but no. He then asked whether that meant they had a republic, but she said she did not know the details because children did not need to know. He was hooked by that remark about children. The girl asked Yuli his age. He said he was 23 and asked hers. She replied that although it was impolite to ask, she thought she was 18, and he was very surprised because he had thought she was about 14. The girl couldn't understand this nonsense because he had proposed to her himself, so Julius really was bad. The man said it was a lie. He said he had only asked her to go with him to the clothing store or he would die. The girl said she was a good wife and could save her husband's life. The man said she was up to her old tricks again. Seeing Julius, the merchant asked if he was a man and where he came from. Julius said he was from the kingdom of Zake. The merchant, familiar with that land of potions and labyrinths, told the hero he had come a long way. Tossing a fruit, the merchant called it a gift and said the hero would be his favorite customer from now on. The hero agreed and promised to come again. The hero did not know what kind of fruit it was, and the maple tree told him it was a momo fruit that should be eaten right away. After taking a bite, he found it sweeter and softer than an apple. A man handed Clint a fruit and asked if she wanted it, saying it was no big deal if she did not, but another man said she would take it. The man saw a strange cat off to the side, and she asked what it was. After the hero called the creature a cat, he protested that she was not an ordinary cat, but a human cat. The man wanted to pet him, saying he had never seen a big cat speak. The cat, unsheathing her claws, asked whether he wanted to fight. He apologized, asked her not to be offended, and decided to buy something from her. He asked if Zake used coins and gave her a silver one. The cat forgave him for today. As a farewell, she said she would brag about meeting a strange man from Zake. When he saw Maple hadn't eaten the fruit, he assumed she didn't like it, but she said that wasn't true, so he said people should enjoy eating and offered to trade it for meat if she didn't. She said it wasn't worth it and thanked him, but he couldn't understand her odd reactions. After tasting the shashlik, he said it was very tasty. Clen said the restaurant is well known for its desert boa, served with a sweet and spicy sauce. The desert boa is a short monster with a poisonous needle in its tail. Its meat is flavorful and inexpensive. Yuli said he had never seen cat people and asked whether many people lived in this country. Ken replied that about 80% were elves and 20% were beast people, and that people rarely visited this place. She admitted she did not know much about it. Then the man asked whether other elves also lived in the desert. Shiley said that here it is considered a sign of courtship when a man gives a girl the food he plans to eat. A man screamed in surprise, then apologized, saying he didn't know. The girl laughed and said she had lied. He called her a brat. At last they were in the right store, and as the man expected, it was very exotic inside. A dressmaker named Amina met them, greeted the boys, and asked what she could make for them today, and Clem said who the clothes were for. Eyeing the hero, the elf asked what kind of outfit a kamikaze would wear and told him to take off his coat indoors. Amina began searching and said that a man should wear a toga and a cloak. The hero noticed, and Glenn pointed out that elves do not wear trousers. The boy screamed that he wanted to know if she was serious. She grinned and asked if he didn't believe her. He asked whether she thought it was funny to laugh at foreigners, and she said it was. At last Yuli found clothes and started trying on everything. The dressmaker said she had always wanted to change someone's clothes and thanked him for his visit. To make a lot of money, the dressmaker needed many fittings. After trying on many clothes, the man asked if that was enough, but Clan and the dressmaker said none of them fit, and he sighed that all his clothes were the same, and he had already tried everything. Spotting an outfit, he asked Maple to look at it. Noticing it cost 20 gold, he asked if it would suit him. The girl called out to him. Clan asked Amina about the outfit, and she said it was beautiful. The man only just realized it cost 20 gold coins. Coins differ by country, but the basic coinage is the same, and 1 gold coin equals 10 large silver coins. One large gold coin equals 10 gold coins, a large silver coin equals 10 large silver coins, and an ordinary silver coin equals 10 copper large coins. There was also a noble banknote equal to one large gold coin. A factory worker's monthly salary is 10 gold coins and 5 large silver coins. The mayor says the coins are about the same value, and Clem told everyone not to worry because the mayor will pay for everything. Julius preferred something more modest, but Clem disagreed because clothes reveal a worldly nature. He agreed but still thought the outfit stood out, even showing a gold thread, and she felt that was better than being underestimated. He agreed but 20 gold coins was 2 months' pay. The dressmaker said he could try it on for free for now. As he headed to the locker room, she shouted that if he got it dirty he would have to buy it back. After he changed, he asked how it looked. The girls did not expect him to look so good in it, and he felt quite comfortable wearing it. Amina said even 20 gold would be a good deal because this fabric, carefully woven from gold threads and dyed with rare materials, is a true masterpiece. Amina sewed this for a wealthy merchant from one country, but he later fell on hard times and could not buy it back. Clem accepted the compliment, and Julius asked how many times she would repeat it. The girl said it was because he looked like a fairy tale prince, and when Julius asked if she was telling the truth, she repeated that she was. Amina also said it suited him well and called the hero a dear prince, but he knew she was saying that only to get them to buy him. Cleen was sure Julio was tired of working at Zake, so this was a good start, and he agreed with her. Serving as a court magician was respectable, but everything he did was dirty, thankless work. When Maple asked whether he would take off his coat, the boy chose to keep it. He planned to begin a new life in this country and live with dignity from now on. The boy asked if they needed anything else, and the girl said they needed a change of clothes and a nightgown. Labyrinths contain many kinds of monsters, and as you advance their strength and the loot they drop increase. Don't underestimate the labyrinths. Greed spares no one. No treasure is worth a life. As they moved on, the hero asked what kind of place it was, and Clen said they were in the slums of Shambhala, so he asked whether it was safe. Smirking, the girl said it was very dangerous. He snapped that she should not take guests to such places. She told him not to get worked up because at most he would be hit on the head. Angry, he said it sounded like that was true. Clem said she often visits this place and that everything will be fine. He asked if that was true. She was certain an excursion should include those sites because the area has wealthy parts as well as slums. The man said their country was in a recession, and the woman agreed, saying not everyone has a job and she could say that for sure. She said the poor criminals and thieves were doing whatever they could to survive. People had few ways to earn money, and the gap between rich and poor kept widening. The desert also lacked farmers. The boy thought it sounded very serious. Maple said mastering the labyrinth would bring more work. Convinced this would help everyone, the girl had the guy's agreement. Asking about other labyrinths, he learned there were several in the desert, the nearest a half-hour camel ride away, and a man offered to take him there because he wanted to see what it was like. As they drove, the man realized he had underestimated the desert. Relentless sun and heat-blown dust wear him down. The environment is much harsher than he imagined. At last they reached the place, and the boy saw the entrance. It was the first labyrinth of Shambhala. Someone called to Clen from the side, and she saw Tia. Tia was an adventurer, and Julius and Maple both noticed how fluffy Tia was. The adventurer asked if they should all enter the maze together, but Maple said they would not, and that it was only an inspection tour. The hero inspected the blade, said he was just looking around and nothing serious, and asked to take this dagger. Tia warned there would be strong enemies and asked if they were sure, and the girl answered that everything was fine, but Julius had already grabbed Clan and said they would succeed together. Startled, Glenn screamed as he dragged her toward the entrance. Tia waved at them, doubting they could handle it together, and said she would wait there and they had to come back right away if anything went wrong. The hero examined the labyrinth and said it resembled the one in the kingdom of Zwick. Clyn said the dungeon looked strange, with no sunlight but at least everything was visible. She glanced back, unsure if they would actually go any farther. The man replied that of course they'd go, and if they didn't fight they wouldn't pass inspection. The girl said her magic wasn't good for killing, so it was basically useless. Her only attack was an ice bullet. When they met, he reminded her she had immediately used paralysis magic on him, and she said it was different. And while stroking her head, he told her she had made him tremble with fear, so she should be confident, and told her to stay behind him because he would be the vanguard. Having served 3 years in the army, he said he should not be underestimated, that the fight would be easy, and that when they returned they would tell her sister about his heroism. The girl said he was wrong if he thought he was their husband, but she stopped when he began to leave. A passage opened ahead, and the hero looked in and counted 8 goblins. Goblins are low-ranking monsters that travel in packs and specialize in group attacks. Going behind them, the hero said he would cleanse and asked the girl to take care of those in front. The girl did not expect that. The hero vanished into the portal and later reappeared, jumping out from above. He charged the seated goblins, swinging his blade. A goblin sensed him and attacked, but the hero dodged into the portal and taunted the goblin. Slipping behind one of them, he cut off the monster's head. Startled, Maple and the goblin stared at each other. Then she grabbed the staff and fired an ice bullet that killed the monster. Surprised by the percentage drop in the size of the crystals, the man held up the object. The woman saw it and asked what it was. He asked if she really did not know, and she insisted that she did know. She said she had never seen anyone fight so easily because it was very hard to do. He said everyone in Zake did this. She had read they were fighting people and could not believe it. He replied boldly that he could. Glenn started hitting him in anger. The man said it was his quirk and that his magic could be combative. His master had also been angry and warned him not to use strategic magic carelessly, because if it failed, it could send him to the past or future. Although the hero found her useful, he disliked how she pulled him in. Maple thought he was crazy, and the hero said he was getting better now and they would speed up, which shocked the girl because she thought it had been a one-time action. Spotting a desert boa, the hero smiled and called it over to cut it, and after skewering a creature on his sword, he asked what it was. Maple said scorpion, but he only later learned it had been a sand lizard. The girl asked you to leave, and he replied that he was having fun, said he was very happy, and showed her his tail. He said he'd never seen all these monsters before, so it should be fun. She said it wasn't fun and that he was acting like a maniac. He wasn't happy with the answer. She added that he treated the dungeons everyone else had worked so hard to conquer like a game. He patted her head and apologized. When she asked what the dungeons in Zake were like, he said they were full of thieving rats and snow wolves and crowded with people. He warned that the upper dungeons had been picked clean of treasure, so they had to go down to the lower levels, and the deeper they went the stronger the monsters became, with most people killed right away, so they could not rush into the dungeon and the girl was not amused. Yuli asked whether Shambhala had an adventurers guild and learned they had not set one up yet. A man asked whether that had caused problems, and the woman said the army and border guards hunted the desert monsters. She said workers handle routine tasks and guilds are unnecessary. Shambhala has few adventurers and little to earn. He told her not to worry because he believes dawn is waiting for them and there are many labyrinths inside, so it should be profitable. A huge door loomed before them, and the man had no idea what it was. He noticed a sign on the door that looked like a stop sign. The girl shouted that they did not need to go any further, and the man was surprised they had gone so far. Clinton insisted they couldn't go any farther, but the boy didn't understand why. She explained a very strong boss guarded the place, and because they had already suffered losses, they had to wait until the potion was made. Smirking, he mentioned how much work he had and suggested doing a quick check. Startled, she screamed and asked why he needed it. She tried to stop him, begging him to wait because she really could not go there and her sister would be furious, but he told her not to worry since the Raja would not know until they told her, and he kept rejoicing while she begged him not to go. Glenn said he could not disobey her and asked him to wait, but the man insisted on taking a peek, and in the end he managed to open the door. Inside was a chimera, a monster with a lion's head and a goat's head, eagle wings, and a snake's tail. The monster growled and rushed toward them. The man was clearly delighted because he had expected this. Behind them, the girl was frightened and said her sister would kill her. Dodging the blow, the man shouted that the boss of the floor was huge. Clint panicked told Yuli they couldn't handle him. The man turned, said he had weakened the boss, and told the girl to go for it. Julius dodged the monster's next strike and landed at its side. A snake-shaped tail whipped toward the hero as he opened a portal. Jumping out to the far side, he began casting a spell. Facing the boss, he cast a fireball and was shocked to find it had no effect. The boy screamed for Clan, and she cast a deadly poison and paralysis spell that immediately reduced the monster's magic resistance, muscle strength, defense, and agility. The man standing to the side also attacked him. The monster's face emerged from the smoke, and Julius grinned. A blow shattered the floor. The girl screamed for him, and he said everything was fine. He had flown out before the impact and said they were almost done. Landing on the chimera's lion head, the hero pierced it with his blade and triggered an explosion spell. Light began to sparkle inside the monster's head and spread through its whole body. The monster fell defeated. The hero landed, finally exhaled, and said he was tired. The girl watched, surprised by his strength. He looked at the broken blade and said the monster had been quite strong and swords were fragile, and she threw herself around his neck, saying he had succeeded. She could hardly believe he had beaten the boss and praised how strong he was. Embarrassed, he said it made sense because he was an elite mage. Exhausted, the hero said they could go home already, and the girl agreed. But then they noticed a treasure chest off to the side that drops from the boss on the second level. Looking inside, they were both surprised and did not know what it was. Standing before an ornate palace, a man and a woman look at it as she says it was all built with the city's money and that the old man knows his business and he admires the building. The girl explains it used to be an old temple, but they planted various flowers. The hero says contentedly that he likes it here. A squirrel flies onto the girl's hand, and someone at home greets the heroes warmly. A beautiful elf in a black dress scolds them for walking too long, and the man blushes and mumbles that it's night now. The girl who came with him mocks him for staring, and the guy strongly denies it. Trying to justify himself, he defends his actions while the elf in the black dress looks very embarrassed and asks whether it suits her. Yuli says everything looks good, which leaves everyone embarrassed, and needing to go to the workshop, the man asks her to show him everything while the black-clad elf offers to help. They move deeper into the palace, and looking at the pedestal by the entrance, the man suggests they tried to imitate a potion factory. The elf confirms this and says they would like to hear his opinion later. The elf says contentedly she knew they had made the right choice. He admits sheepishly that anyone could have done it, but he would not let them down. The other girl notices the glint in his eyes. Squatting down, he says it will be hard to compare to the original, but the production is excellent, and the elf asks again happily. Julius says he'll need a wand and some materials to do his job. She says she'll send them as soon as she can. Another points out they can now begin attacking the labyrinth. A man replies that he dealt with the chimera and the first one. The elf in black looks surprised. Her sister folds her arms across her chest and says confidently she can say no thanks, and the guy behind her reminds her she was nervous all the time. Julius's companion points out that the chimera dropped a golden topaz, a colorless horned, and a blue-black obsidian, and the other elf admires them, noting the combination seems like a coincidence. Julius casually asks how the residents are built. The girl in the dress blushes at the question. She invites him into the room. In response, he asks why she is nervous about this question. Another elf hints that this question will disturb him as well. He tells her to be quiet. She shows him the living room and the dining room, and he thinks the place is nice. Noticing the items, he asks why they were brought. The elf in the dress says the items are all theirs and adds that they had no choice. The other one says the stuffed rabbit is hers. The elf in the dress admits sheepishly that he chose them. The other says he will get used to marriage. The man realizes he has completely forgotten about this problem. Yes, he asks what's upstairs. They say their common room is upstairs, and he feels uneasy. He runs upstairs, goes into the room, and asks what it is. A large canopy bed dominates the room. The room is very spacious. The elves stand shyly beside him. He asks skeptically why the room looks like a brothel. Julius reproachfully asks the elf if she acted on the chief's orders or on her own, and the elf denies any involvement. They conclude it was the old man's idea after all. The girl repeats phrases about taking control of the man. A man asks why she says that, and her sister adds that she smells good. Noticing the girl in the black dress is perfumed and shining and clearly dressed up, she becomes embarrassed and tries to explain. She remembers the dark-haired elf telling her she could influence whether Julius would fall in love with her. Other elves hurry to help her and offer advice. Yuli realized the secretary was the problem. Another elf pointed out the girl was nicer when she was angry. The man says the girl can go home because he doesn't need anything like that. Another elf says that under Shambhala law, married couples must sleep together. The heroes disagree with her. Remembering his conversation with the old man, the guy apologizes to the girls and says he was only teasing him. Julia suggests they go home quietly since he definitely won't run away. They tell him firmly that the mayor's orders are final and they cannot return. One girl tries to persuade him. The other is astonished by her bold proposals, but he refuses to change his position. Confronted with her uncomfortable questions, he tries to deny everything. The elf says Julius has done a lot for Shambhala and should be rewarded. The other person agrees, but the man does not understand the logic. Two people close in on him from both sides. One says they personally changed his life and should take responsibility. The other agrees and signals to attack him. They end up lying on the bed, with the girl on top of Julia. Just then the mayor enters and announces a special banquet has been prepared for him. The heroes cry out in surprise. Clearing his throat, the old man asks for forgiveness. He leaves, calls one of the elves Klin, and leaves the rest to her. An indecent assumption from him outrages the boy and the girl. This starts the hectic life in Shambhala. Thunder rages over the kingdom of Zake and lightning flashes. Bald Heinrich sits in his office, unable to believe the news he has just received. Although His Majesty put him in charge of the potion factory, and he is one of Zake's greatest nobles, he thinks he still can't meet next month's quota. The thought angers the man. Julius caused Henry to end up in this difficult situation. He concludes that 2 orbs were stolen, 2 production lines were halted, and someone also stole secret documents. Heinrich regards this as a real betrayal. Realizing this, he knew he could not report it anywhere, because he would then be held accountable as the leader. Refusing to let this information reach His Majesty, the man grows furious, slams his fist on the table, and curses Julius. Just then the butler brings Henry a letter into the study, and he acts as if nothing happened. The servant says a letter has arrived from the royal palace. The letter said production had to be doubled. He stared in shock and nervously said they couldn't raise output without losing efficiency. Henry can't see how they could increase orders given the situation. The servant says they need more goods because of the war with neighboring countries. A man throws a jug at him in anger, and it breaks against the wall. When the butler suggests telling the truth, the man knows it will not end well and instead orders a 30% increase to the potion and boosts production, saying he wants to drive the 4 eyes to the fullest. The servant reports complaints from senior alchemists. Heinrich says reproachfully that Julius did all the work himself, so they should manage it too. The butler thinks the decision is a complete failure, and the man shouted at him not to criticize his superior's orders. Pouring himself a glass of liquor, Heinrich tells himself people will keep buying their potions, convinced that as long as labyrinths and wars exist the business will continue, because there is no other mass production factory like this. Julius meets a long-haired man in a white jumpsuit named Marius, with a cigarette in his mouth. Julius asks whether the hero will go to war again. Marius looks very surprised to see him. Longhair says if he stops being a mage, he is finished. Smiling replies he has had enough. Marius points at him and asks what he has become. Satisfied, Julius says he has become an alchemist. He snaps awake and realizes it was all a dream as the sun begins to rise on the horizon. Yuli steps onto the balcony and looks out at the sea. He stretches and thinks he drank too much yesterday. He remembers with pleasure how the mayor kept pouring him drinks, cannot understand why older people want young people to drink so much, and is also thinking about sleep. Remembering Marius, his master, he hopes the boys are all right. He sees one of the Elven sisters enter the water naked. Unnoticed by her, he feels very embarrassed by the sight. Julius blushes all the way to his ears. Confused, the hero doesn't understand why she's here naked, while the elf wades farther and farther into the water. The man moves closer and hides behind a bush. Blushing, he watches her from his hiding place and tells himself he didn't do it on purpose and that she was the one who suggested swimming here. The elf tells herself the water in Zake was too cold, but here it feels just right. The man realizes that peeping like this is wrong. Maple appears beside him and asks whether he likes her, making him freeze and wonder how long she has been there, while the elf says she has been here since he hid, and he nervously thinks the worst of the sisters has found him. She says she understands how Julius feels. The girl praises her sister's beauty, and the boy reproaches her for speaking like a mayor. The elf asks whether her sister is the most beautiful in the world, and the boy is embarrassed and cannot answer. Clan understands everything anyway. Curious, she asks whether her sister would be happy to hear this. Julius drops to his knees and begs her not to tell the sister anything. Maple expects to like this information. The man admits he would still be awkward. Maple laughs at his embarrassment, and he waves her off. The elf asks the hero again whether her sister was beautiful. He pushes past his embarrassment, agrees, and compares her to a goddess. When he answers, Maple's eyes sparkle, and she says the answer is absolutely correct. The elf says her sister takes a bath at the same time every day, and she talks so enthusiastically about loving her sister that the embarrassed man begins to question whether she's normal. Maple recommends another look. Julius says he won't do it again, and she calls him boring. Julius and 2 sisters are filling the pool from a large barrel, and the boy looked slightly embarrassed while the girl helped him pour. She wipes sweat from her forehead and meets his gaze. The elf asks what's wrong, but the man, still shaken by the morning's incident, turns away and says it's nothing. Yuli tells himself to calm down and focus on the task. Klin says her sister is too beautiful for that to work. He waves her off, and the elf does not understand. The boy looks at the pool and decides it's enough, then lists the recovery potion ingredients: oasis water, a goblin magic stone, herbs, aloe, and date palm seeds. The girls put all the magic stones into the pool and do so obediently. He pours magic into it with his staff, and the water begins to bubble. Clean is amazed at how soft the water feels, and the other elf says she would gladly take such a bath but is already bathed. Remembering the morning, he sheepishly tells them they're distracting him, and they apologize. The girls fall silent until the man turns and says the basic potion is ready. The elf asks what to do next. The hero explains more ingredients must be added, but he has never done that because alchemists handle it. She wonders if it will be okay. He says he has a recipe they stole. Julius is confident that if alchemists can do it, he can too. He notes recovery potions are made of herbs and aloe, and he plans to add dates for flavor instead of the apples put in his wike, and they add the remaining ingredients to the potion. The girls think it looks delicious and smells sweet. Julius suggests finishing it all and mixing it with magic. Maple wishes him luck and reassures him not to worry, saying he was the most skilled in the factory. Stirring the potion, he notices the staff is thicker and heavier than he expected and apologizes to the girls for possibly making a mistake. The girls ask if everything is okay and say it smells great, and the guy says everything will be ready now. A whole pool of candy lay before them. The elves look surprised, and the man looked skeptical. They say with delight that it feels like a fairy tale and smile. The man then picks up one of the candies and inspects it. He's not sure candies should look so jelly-like. Clem eats the candy straight from his hand. Yuli reproachfully says she can't just eat it because she might get sick. She chose it and says it's delicious, smooth, tender, and sweet and sour like a fruit. Another girl is unsure if it really tastes that good. The guy tries to stop them from getting the candy because they are not completely sure. The elf ignores him, eats the product, and enjoys it. Clem praises Yuli for inventing a new delicacy and calls Yuli a genius. He asks whether it really tastes that good. She offers to try it, but he refuses, saying they need to test it first. The elves start forgiving again. The man thinks they have lost their minds. A noise interrupts them, and the mayor enters, announcing an emergency and asking if they have any potions. His servant carries a battered cat on his back. The heroes anxiously recognize the cat as Tia. The cat lies on her back in a bag, eyes closed. The hero's CT is in a pitiful state. They lay her on the couch and are stunned by how severe her wounds are, which she suffered in the dungeon during an attack by a level 5 ogre. Crying, the other cats beg Julius to help her because they heard potions are the best cure for wounds inflicted by monsters. Convinced a potion cannot help a wound this serious, the boy sadly believes it will not work. The elf rushes over and says they should try. She calls Kling and goes to the pool with candies. Julia is asked what it is, and he says it is a restorative potion that did not go as planned. Maple brings one of the candies. The other elf says it's okay. Both say they felt themselves getting stronger, and the man hesitates to give something so questionable to a patient. The elf objects and shouts that he will never know unless he tries. Maple puts the candy in his mouth first. A man is puzzled, and the mayor explains that desert girls have strong roots. She gives the candy to the cat, and in the blink of an eye it becomes fluffy. Tia wakes and sits up on the couch, healthy and amazed that everything is healed, and the others are equally amazed. Everyone shouts with joy that it is a miracle. They call it magnificent and say its restorative effect is powerful. Holding the candy, the man thinks it is almost too strong, even better than usual. Mentioning the elixir, the mayor draws the boy's attention. The old man says it is a legendary elixir from ancient texts that can restore vitality and heal any injury. The mayor thought it was a fairy tale. The girls do not understand him. The old man says he can help them resist Zake's potions and that they must found a guild as soon as possible. The elves note they have a lot to do and more will come. As Julius is about to speak, the mayor interrupts and asks him to set up mass production of the elixir. The old man insists the younger man must do it at any cost, but the younger man replies firmly that he must refuse. Everyone watches him with tense expressions. Julius holds up the candy, calls it a complete failure, and says he, as mayor, should understand this. The old man's sighs agrees. At a table, a boy reads books. Maple sits beside him, and another elf comes over with a plate of fruit. He believes he tried many times after that to make elixirs, but failed. Julius doesn't understand why. He admitted he had misunderstood the basics of alchemy and could study them in his wife's library, but applying them would be difficult. Maple asks why he wants the potion, says candy is just as good, and the other elf agrees. He says that if they use the candy in Shambhala, they will have no problems and will become stronger. But he adds they are not for sale, because they are so effective they can cure a very sick person instantly. The man wonders how much they will cost, and Clan, already on his shoulders, asks again and says they simply won't earn anything. Another elf says it's a lot of money, more than 100 large gold coins. Tossing a candy to Maple, The boy replies it's too expensive for adventurers, and there's no point in them if they can't buy them. Glenn asks whether they can do the same as with potions. The man says that would make it too cheap and suggests selling the elixir to other countries. Julius believes the elixir is too valuable because it could be used to create an immortal army. The man warns that this legendary elixir can destroy the world and is dangerous not only to Shambhala, but to the entire planet. The elf accepts the chilling tale. Julius decides they need a potion slightly better than Swike's, made in quantities large enough to start a market war. He concludes they can't resolve these issues right now and suggests sharing the elixir's power. The elf praises the man for making the legendary candy and calls him the best. Julius replies contentedly that it's because he's elite. Glenn asks whether Julius can solve the problem, and Julius says he is working on it. The elf says she must go help the city's mayor, and Maple notes with concern that he does not want him to collapse from fatigue. Assuring them it's not a problem, he says he's just very bored. The girls believe him and begin to leave, but one of them approaches him. Maple kisses the boy on the cheek and tells him to be good. Angrily, he shouts after her as she runs away. It's clear to him they can't do without those potions. He reconsiders the possibility of sharing the elixir's power. A boy reaches for an orange slice on a plate of fruit. The slices stick together like an accordion. He keeps thinking about it. Two cats thank Julius for helping their sister. A man asks how she's doing, and they say she's fine but resting today. One of the cats says she mumbles the name Julia and smiles oddly. The hero feels uneasy. Yuli packs the box for the journey and asks if anyone is hurt because he needs to test several potions. They reply that many people are hurt in the dungeon and thank him. Julius hands him a vessel with a potion and tells him to give it to the wounded and a lever of you. At that moment, someone comes up to them and asks what the man is doing here. Marmor is a huge humanoid tiger and an adventurer, and the cats say he is number 2 in the dungeon. The cats scold him for his attitude, saying Julius was the one who helped their sister. Marmor spreads his paws and says he does not know him. Tiger taunts his sister for not being able to hold out properly in the dungeon and then shouts that his time has come. The cat tries to reason with him, but he brushes her off, saying he hates people and that even looking at the man makes him want to kill him, and Julius smiles and says the more wounded the better. Provoked by the boy, the tiger attacks him with a scream. A while later, Julius goes to the mayor's office with 2 sisters and a dark-haired elf, and the mayor asks what is wrong. Setting the potion on the office table, he watches the old man study the vessel in confusion. Everyone in the office watched the flask. The man smirked, apologized for making them wait, and said this was the very Shambhala potion they had asked him for. When the elf asks how he did it, Julius says it's the reverse of the original idea, shows the candy, and explains that if you can't do it, use what you've already done. He says the idea came after she cut the fruit for him, and he decided to split the candy and rework it. Julia says even potions can be made by mixing a thick, undiluted solution into water, so he figured he could do the same with candy. The girls agree it's a brilliant idea. One man notes that a single candy can make 100 bottles of potion. Everyone is amazed by the amount. The mayor takes the flask in his hands, and the hero says they have solved the problem of mass production. Recalling the tiger fight, he mockingly says that thanks to the test subjects' cooperation, they have already tested the potion and confirmed it works. He, the mayor, shakens, and Julius talk about turning the world upside down, and the old man agrees. Maple looks over their agreement and says this historic day will later be called the dawn of Shambhala. Her sister agrees. Glenn arrives in a deserted, rundown part of the city, goes into a shabby house, greets an old man with an eye patch, and tells him she has a job for him. Recognizing her, he calls her Mabel, and she replies that they haven't seen each other in a long time and calls him Rashid. The man confirms they have not met in a long time. The girl thinks these slums were her home until recently. Reflecting on the many mistakes she's made, she brushes off Rashid when he says she hasn't grown at all. She tells him proudly that she is already married, and he is surprised by the news. He insists she is still a teenager, but the elf confidently says she is already 18. Rashid can hardly believe it as she sits up and asks him if she looks like an adult yet. Out loud he agrees with her, but inwardly he thinks it is completely untrue. She suggests he become an adventurer, because now that the labyrinth has been excavated, it's time to earn money and it's more profitable than turning to crime. Initially skeptical, he asks whether she thinks he can handle it. Glenn says he can and will be trained. The man thinks this is a hassle. The girl points out that if they do nothing, the men will start attacking them. The man says it is unbearable. The elf notes that adventurers get preferential treatment. Accepting her offer, he asks to speak with people like him. She says that would be great. Glenn adds that children help when they can, and remembers how her sister gave her a future a child from the slums does not have. Her aim is simply to give them some life. The man agrees, and the elf says that's what she likes about Rashid. Rashid protests that the idea does not please him. Rashid notices the girl has changed and remembers when she first arrived after Lake Mac was drained. The man says she has matured because of her husband. She is unsure, and he laughs softly at her doubt. But with confident admiration, she declares she is ready to do anything for Yuli. Rashid says she's fallen in love, and the girl replies she only wants to annoy him, adding she'd like to tease him a little, but the man is not impressed. After taking a sip from the bottle, the man asks her what Julius is doing now. Assuming he is watching her sister again, and not expecting that answer, Rashid chokes on his drink. Although he scolds her and sends her away, she remains completely pleased with herself. On his balcony, Julius admits he's been watching Roger again. Although he knows it's wrong, he is deeply captivated by her beauty. Remembering his teacher, the boy silently tells him that Shambhala is a wonderful place. Raja walks up behind him with a bag of groceries and calls out, causing him to flinch in fear. The girl asks what happened. He replies that everything is fine but says something is wrong with her. She denies it. He notices her hand, every finger bandaged, takes it in his hand, and asks why. Though she insists she is fine, he convinces her to take the potion and stays by her side. The elf tells him to stop being so persistent. They stand too close and both feel awkward. Just then Glenn and the mayor peer into the room with overly friendly smiles. The heroes look scared. Glenn says it was a close call, and the girl and the guy ask why they're here. Glenn says she saw him flirting with her sister. The mayor says it's normal for a married couple. The man denies it. Raja says they really are a couple, and Julius tells her not to complicate things. He asks the mayor what he wants. The mayor says they have a small problem. The man asks what happened this time. The old man asks him to attend the council meeting this afternoon. He is very surprised by the request, and the girls do not understand why. Walking down the long corridor to the meeting, the old man explains that he is not the king, but the city's mayor, and only responsible for governing it. They enter the hall, and he says the council decides how the country is governed, while two elves inside stare at the man, one with white hair and glasses, and the other with dark hair and a mustache. Hundreds of elves watch him from the stands. The sisters sit on a bench. Julius looks confident, but keeps thinking about the problems he had with the warring factions. The mayor announces the boy as the potion maker, and gives his full name. The boy thinks the old man told him to keep quiet. The mustached elf says his people had heard of the boy, and introduces himself as General Hassam. Bardiel, a white-haired elf and master of the Merchant Guild, introduces himself, addresses the boy with disrespect, and looks at him with suspicion, and Julia is outraged. The elf suggests they get started and notes that everyone here supports the mayor's labyrinth project, though one nuance bothers them. Pointing at Julius, he shouts angrily that the problem is that he is a man from his wife. That confuses the guy. Bardiel accuses the boy of being a cunning pagan who steals his country's technology and sells it to other nations to gain status and prestige through potion making, and says the merchant would not trust him. Raja shouts they stole the technology, and the man had nothing to do with it, while Bardiel says the people from Zweig aren't stupid and could have planned the whole thing. The crowd starts to support the elf, accusing him of wanting to enslave their girls and criticizing where the mayor is looking. Julia says nothing. White Herod claims an alchemist can easily brew potions, but in reality he can't do anything. Maple wants to speak about the elixir, but his sister stops her. Turning to them, the elf saw the sister fall silent, since the elixir was kept secret to avoid unnecessary trouble, and outsiders might think Julius was using the stolen recipe to gain favor. Hassam joins the conversation and, turning to the elf, says the boy betrayed his homeland to bless their land and healed many of the wounded. Seeing this, the crowd affirms that Julius deserves their trust, and the mayor says he is indispensable to the country. Bardiel demands proof of the boy's worth, and the old man asks what they must do to convince him. A white-haired elf with a scarred smile presents a reconstruction of Lake Mac. The audience comes around to him, and the meeting wraps up. Later, Julius sinks onto the couch in the mayor's office and lets out a tired sigh. The mayor thanks him for his hard work. The black-haired elf asks how he feels. Julius says it's better than in Zake. He says he felt like a fish on a cutting board. Glenn jokes about it, and he waves it off. And the guy understands the look and says contentedly that he will be able to look at Shambhala from the inside. Julius believes the conflict arises from the clash between the executive and Bardiel's military merchants, and in a trade-based country, Bardiel cannot be ignored. He thinks it's good they at least have a positive attitude about the potion business. Raja stands there irritated and asks her if she is angry. The girl answers confidently that she is. She shouts that he is here by their will, and that calling him an ignorant pagan was very impolite. Clinton Ulai notes she is frightening when angry. An elf says she would not stay silent if someone insulted her husband. The man and the woman both feel embarrassed by that phrasing, and the mayor and the cleaner are amused by the hero's embarrassment. The boy asks about Lake Mac. The old man says it is a medium-sized lake east of Shambhala and recalls a time when the lake and its water dried up overnight. Rasha says they still don't know the reason. Clen adds that many people, including her, have been forced to move to the slums because of it. The mayor lays his hand on her head and says he adopted them back then. A man says it is impossible to revive a dead lake, even if he is not elite. Maple turns to him, pleading, begging him to return Lake Mac. She says he can ask her for anything in return. Bardiel believes the lake dried up overnight, the prosperous city perished, and the elves feared the curse so much that no one comes near it now. Finishing his meal, he thinks about how the boy agreed to the reconstruction. The elf thinks mockingly that he should have left, since the man is too stupid to get sarcasm, and the elf already knows the man's reputation in Zake. Ardil knows that the man is a court magician who fled from the enemy, was sent to the factory, and then fled the country. Sipping wine, the elf cannot see how Julius can help them. He calls the mayor Sham and praises the wine. The old man notices the boy has something they don't. Bardil asks what a man who keeps running away can do. The elf rises from the table, ends the conversation, thanks the mayor for inviting him to breakfast and leaves. The old man believes Julius has only been here a few days. He runs through his accomplishments in his head, including clearing dungeons, producing potions in large quantities, and creating a remarkable elixir. The mayor believes Bardil must understand that this is reality. By then, Julius and his wives were already at the lake. One man confidently says he will not succeed and complains that something is wrong with the place. Raja says the area where the ruins now stand used to be noisy, and Clen adds that it is like hell in the desert. The man asks what the authorities say about what happened to the lake. The elf says they've done a lot of research, but no one has a definite answer. Julius suggests a change in groundwater flow could be the cause. Raja notes the lake could not have dried up overnight. The man concludes that if they knew the cause, they would solve the problem themselves. The guy asks for a report of everything he saw. Clen turns to Julius. She thanks him for restoring the lake, and he admits sheepishly that he hasn't done anything yet. The girl makes a rude joke, and the guy tells her to get to work, pulling her ears in retaliation. He moves on and realizes he doesn't know what to ask her for. Still in the mayor's office, the man said he was not God. The man says he's not sure he can bring the lake back. Clan asks if he remembers the slums. She says life there has only gotten worse and blames the lake disaster. The sisters say that if the lake is restored, they can all return home and be safe. The mayor asks him to imagine bringing the dried-up oasis back to life. The old man says his fame will soar, people will call him a hero and put his likeness on products, and Clan adds he will become super elite. After telling them he cannot bring the lakes back, the Raja comes up behind him. Wrapping her arms around his neck from behind, she pleads with him to try because it means a lot to them. Maple attempts to seduce him. He asks her angrily what she is doing in front of her father. The mayor asks whether he should leave. The anger usually grows stronger. A man shouts that he understands. They all smile warmly and ask him again. Sheepishly, he says he will get into trouble if he doesn't handle this. He also refuses to let Bardil try to make his life harder. He resolved to prove he was sincere even if he failed. Julius recalls saying this, but alone in a deserted place, he dies from the heat. The maple tree is hanging on his shoulders, and she is so hot that sweat is pouring off them like rain. Raja suggests they rest until sunset, and the others agree. Clyn tugs the hero's cheek, saying she is very upset. The man asks her to stop tormenting him. Pinching her thigh, he knocks her off the man while she squeals. The elf is on all fours on the ground. Julia calls it retribution, and Raja urges them to move. Maple stops them, saying she felt something through the ground. The man thinks it's something obscene and tries to stop her. The girl says she feels something thin under her. The guy looks at her in amazement. Sitting down beside her, he presses his hand to the ground and closes his eyes. Julia senses a subtle magic. He asks Raji how deep it is. Raji says she is not very good with such subtleties. Maple says his sister is attractive, but she denies it and says she owns a sword. Pressing both hands to the ground, the man asks them not to quarrel and to come closer to him, says he will fight his way through, and Raja asks what he means. A burst of explosive magic cracks the ground beneath his hands into huge dry chunks. Many fragments of rock and soil are scattered in every direction across a wide area. The ground under the heroes gives way, and they scream. They all tumble into the water with a loud splash. Carried by the current and lying on their backs, they are happy there was water and that they are alive. They finally get up, and Raja, sounding indignant, demands to know what kind of magic it was, while the man replies sheepishly that the ground was more fragile than he expected, but pointing to the dungeon entrance they had been brought to, says it was worth it. They drew closer to a large gate. Huge stems wound around it, and the entrance was set into the stone wall. They step onto the threshold, wringing moisture from their things and looking at the closed doors. The man says it was a great job. Clen asks that they praise her because she was the first to notice something strange. Raja says he no longer wants to praise her. The elf says she didn't even know a cavity was here. Julia suggests that might explain the water drying up. The sisters agree, and the hero says only one thing remains to be done. Smiling, he says they must explore the dungeon, and the elves are shocked. Raja tries to stop him, saying they are taking a big risk and pointing out that he is only an alchemist. The man says it's part of their investigation and that coming here only to report is boring. She rests her hands on his shoulders and tells him to wait for the research team. The girl asks her sister for help, but Clen knows nothing will work. After slipping free of Raji's grasp, he tells them to follow him. She asks what that was. The man says it was a short teleportation, but tells her not to worry because someone is in the dungeon. A pack of Sahagin, fish monsters smart enough to wield a variety of weapons, and a swarm of tree-dwelling ant monsters that grab and feed on living creatures have appeared in the dungeon. In total, there were 2 archers, Sahagin, and 3 ants standing in front of them. Fish monsters fired arrows at the heroes. Yuli teleports behind the Sahagins and drops onto them from above. The monsters are confused. A single swing of his twin daggers severs the monster archers' heads. Clen wields a staff that lowers enemies' agility and defense. Raja rushes past her and drives a stabbing blow into one of the ants, tearing a huge hole in the tree's trunk. Maple launches a fireball at enemies. Julius cuts another ant, and Raja says he's gone mad. Raja asks why the alchemist is in the vanguard. The man replies the alchemist is more efficient. The elf notes this is against the rules. After the fight, Raja admits she's never seen magic used like that. While Maple gathers crystals from the fallen monsters, she says that's why Raja's people disliked her. The man also thinks he's a bad person. Raja says he did not have the dexterity to succeed. Clen says he had too much common sense. The boy is indignant that his captors are saying all this. Despite the complaints, the investigation carried on as they hid behind rocks, watching other Sahagins. The boy told his sisters he would circle to the other side and that they should attack. The girls agreed and were already running to attack. When the elves charged, Julius thought these 2 were among the best in the country. Raja severs another Sahagin's head with his sword. The man thinks the sisters' combat level is very high and that they can react to his moves. Julius thinks they are the most beautiful of all true adventurers and that it will be fun. Clint says he misses Sahagin and doesn't want to eat fried fish anytime soon. The man asks where he came from first. The elf replies he came from the dungeon. He observes the dungeon was originally arboreal and the monster is not of that species. Roja suggests Lake Mac influences the dungeon. Aaron does not rule out that option. They reach another gate, and the man says he thinks the boss will show up there. The women object to them going there as a group of 3. Trembling, Maple vows that after the fight she will whip him. The boy says she can do it lightly. The sisters say that would let him off too easily. Inside, they spot a hermit crab with a hard shell and a dangerous water jet. Seeing the monster, Julius knows the fight will be difficult because of its impenetrable shell and pungent smell, and it attacks. Using a boulder to shield themselves from the water jet, they heed Raja's call to weaken him, and Maple lowers his defenses again as the monster prepares to attack. Raja swung a slash at the monster's claw, but the shell didn't budge. Raja shouts that it is too hard, and a man appears beside the monster, presses his hands to the ground, and says if it does not work from above, he will try from below. The monster lifts its massive claw to strike Julius as the girls call his name in concern. The man conjures an earthen bayonet under the monster's belly and drives it through. Julius looks at the dead monster and says they have won. Raja says it was too crazy, and the man in front of her says she is worrying too much. Clan is pleased they won, and the hero agrees with her. The elf spots a treasure chest nearby, and Raja asks what is inside. 2 chests appeared, one larger and one smaller, while the man points out that 2 chests are rare, and Clen says the big one is for the greedy and they need to open the small one. Julia says both can be opened and lifts the lid, starting with the larger one. Clem is shocked by his own carelessness and surprised by the contents. The boy pulls out a spool of silk and examines it. The sisters watch in amazement, and he admits he has never heard of artifacts that act as labyrinth traps. Raja picks up the cloth and is surprised that something like this would appear instead of precious stones. Clan wonders if this is fate. He tells them to take the fabric if they like it, and the girls are very happy. Julius sighs and says he will never understand women. Opening the smaller chest, he finds a round object lying on top of the coins and doesn't know what it is. Sierra says the creature looks like a doll. Julius finds it small and strange but very cute. The creature asks where it is currently. The heroes are stunned to hear it speak. In Shambhala, Sierra introduces herself and presents Julius as John, and Julius grows angry, but the robot manages to register him. The robot repeats the names Maple, Sierra, and John. Julius angrily shouts that he is not John while the girl giggles. Sierra asks the robot to change its name, but it says it cannot, so she is touched and makes it her henchman. The creature explains he is an organizational robot the creator made to assist him, and invites the heroes to ask any question. Julius asks why Lake Macleod disappeared. Sierra questions how the robot would know, but he tells them to look in one direction. Water pours from a huge crack. The robot explains that a cavern formed under the lake and blocked the underground water flow. Excited, the girls ask whether sealing all the leaks will restore the oasis, and the robot confirms it will. Closing the holes is unclear, though some say ice magic would make it easy. Sierra asks Julius, hoping he can do something about it. Julius is surprised and asks why. The girls say it's because he's an elitist and a lunatic, and simply because it's him. Julius is confused but flattered. Julia insists it can be done. He believes there is a way, but the girls oppose it and do not want him to leave. The royal library in Zake is full of books on the subject, so he plans to borrow them. Tears in his eyes, Maple shouts no, saying they have already become a family, and asks whether they trust him. Grinning, the young man says they will not listen to him anyway, but he has already decided everything for himself and replies firmly, correct. Sierra says if he doesn't come back, they will come for him because they like living together, and he reassures her not to worry, promising to come back soon. Both girls wish him good luck and smile as they tell him they will wait for him at home. Julius steps through the portal, feeling his heart is already in Shambhala. The scene shifts to the kingdom of Zake, where a sinister man watches Julius arrive and with a malicious grin anticipates what will follow. Julius realizes people walk long distances and estimates it will take him about half a day to get to his bike. He wonders whether this world has an end and knows the magicians are still unsure. The young man recalls his master's instructions: do not stray from the path of light, do not stay here, and do not go with others. Julius realizes his only knowledge of dimensional magic comes from the master. Approaching the exit, he wonders what is happening in Zake now. An elderly nun meets him, and he smiles as he calls her the director. Relieved, the director says he is okay. Ulai apologizes for the trouble and hands her a bag of money. She asks sadly whether he really betrayed the country, then immediately adds that the main thing is that at least he's alive. He asks what the visitors from the castle wanted. The director says they left after briefly searching the orphanage. Julius jokingly calls her greedy after she says she was promised a reward for him, and she tells him to stop treating her like a child. Marius appears surprised that Julius is still in the country after causing him so much trouble. Marius says the nobles seized his workshop because they dislike commoners making money. Julius says he feels positively about him. Marius jokes that he should thank the officials then. Marius offers to help, even to make a bomb. Julius notes that serious people act badly and lose their composure. He invites Yuli to live with him, promising 3 meals and a place to sleep after learning he lives abroad. Julius gratefully accepts the offer, believing Marius has been his best friend for a long time. Marius is embarrassed and asks not to be touched. Julius says he needs to go get something ready. Thanking the director for the welcome, the young man says it's already late, and Marius asks him to wait. Julius finds the castle's security impressive, likely because of the steady stream of people hoping to get rich, but he is sure it is nothing compared to his transfer magic. Entering the royal library, he hopes no one is guarding it. The young man spots Elven, the court's chief magician, in the library. Trying to slip by unnoticed, he knows he can't risk being found, but Elven sneezes loudly and nearly exposes him. Julius panics, realizes he must gather all the necessary books and leave as quickly as possible. Quickly, he gathers the books, thinking that if not for the master, he would have more freedom to search. Julius is terrified of Elvens and simply doesn't want to deal with him. After collecting everything he needed, he feels relieved and leaves the library. Finally seeing his master's face, he notices how many gray hairs he has and wishes him a long life. Suddenly he realizes something is wrong and, confused, asks where he is. You're suggesting he may have messed up the transfer spell himself. Horrified, Julius looks around and realizes he is in the middle of a huge, empty coliseum. This is not his problem because someone else rewrote the coordinates. Alvin's expression makes it clear it's rude to leave without saying hello. Julius freezes when he says Elvin's name, and Elvin stares at him sternly, calling him a negligent student. Elvin demands to be called Master Elvin instead of just Master, and Julius says it does not matter. Noticing the student's disrespect, the master asks why he rewrote the transfer coordinates. Smirking, he calls Julius a stupid runaway student who now sneaks around like a petty thief. The master grins and says it would have been wise to at least say hello. Julius takes a fighting stance. Julius asks whether all of this was done just for this, and the master promises to let him go depending on his answer. Julius apologizes sarcastically, then says firmly he will not return and that his decision is final. The master is furious that Julius used the forbidden dimensional magic again. The young man says it's not his place to decide. Yelling, he tells the teacher not to get cocky. The teacher and the student square off. Julius knows that if he relaxes for even a moment, he will die. Elvin calls his actions base, but Julius declares he is no longer a magician and has become a new kind of alchemist. The master, wearing a malicious grin, says he now understands everything. Elvin says that as a former teacher, he must punish the negligent student. Julius realizes this is very bad. Poised to use a special killing technique, he releases his most powerful explosive magic with a furious shout. Julius stands up to the master. The master knows the student can only do cheap tricks. Shocked, he realizes Julius put a silence bracelet on him, cutting off his magic. When the master asks where he learned those tricks, Julius says he recently met a man who knows a thing or two about them. Smiling, the man asks whether he wants to fight and says he thinks he'll give up. He explains a master cannot be strict with his disciple and removes his bracelet of silence. He lands a devastating teacher's strike on Julius, who cries out in pain. He says scolding children is an adult's responsibility, and as a reward for winning, he gives him an old book. The man explains he wrote a book on alchemy out of curiosity, and after he became an alchemist, he asked for forgiveness. He says he spent 3 years trying to get it back and worked hard to have the charges dropped. Tearful, Julius thanks him, and the master remembers that he had wanted to bring him back when they destroyed the neighboring country. The master orders his foolish apprentice to leave. Julius suggests the apprentice leave Zwick and come with him. He refuses, saying adults are not so free, and Julius worries that without the master his wife will fall into decay. Julius hands him the potion, says it is not from his wife, and asks him to accept the gift. Alarmed, the master realizes that if this comes to light, the kingdom of Zwick will suffer greatly. Grinning, he says he's increasingly bored here and hopes he can now drink while sitting on the royal throne. Julius remembers that as a child he thought the master had abandoned him and fell into despair, but now he knows that was not true. He admits he still cannot compare to him. The master calls Shambhala a good country and says he is sorry to say goodbye. The master says goodbye to his foolish student, while Julius shyly asks him to drink in moderation. Julius steps into the portal, deciding it's time to return to his new home. Meanwhile, in Shambhala, the girls brief the mayor on the discovery in the labyrinth beneath the lake. The mayor is amazed by the huge gems, and the girl confirms they are impressive. The mayor calls the repeated coincidence fate and adds that the labyrinth has blessed them. Sierra asks whether Maple has decided and says she wants to support him because he feels like someone she's known her whole life. Maple says plainly that Sierra loves Julius. Sierra sheepishly admits she doesn't hate him that much. Maple agrees. She shyly imagines she would probably like being alone with him. Sierra wonders sheepishly whether he would take her back. The servant says they will work together to make Master Julius fall in love with them. The mayor worries he must trick the man into marrying his daughters because it is simply necessary. The robot congratulates the girl on her upcoming marriage, and she laughs and thanks him. When Julius returns, the robot calls him John, and Julius angrily says he is not John. Julius asks where everyone else is. The robot says they have already left. He says he will rest until dinner, and Julius agrees, asking to be woken when dinner is ready. The robot realizes that Plan B is now in effect. At the bedside of the sleeping Julius, the girl sits and says he traveled thousands of miles to reach them by fate. She thinks about him, and Julius asks why she looks so sad. At dawn, Julius wakes and realizes he has slept too long. He figures the damn golem didn't even wake him. To his shock, he finds one of the girls sleeping in his bed. The girl in bed says good morning to Julia, and he asks in surprise what they are doing here. Sheepishly, the girls say they simply mix up the beds. Julius calls it a pathetic excuse. Julie is outraged at how they are dressed. The girls say they always dress that way, but a man yells at them to stop lying. A girl cuddles up to him and says he's too cold and needs to be warmed up. The second sister steps forward and says their plan is working. Julius panics and shouts that she is going there too. Pressed from both sides, the man is at a loss about what to do with these two. The sisters look at him with sly, embarrassed expressions, refusing to back down. Finally losing his patience, Julius yells at them to stop immediately. The sisters keep teasing him, and one grins as she asks if this is his first time in such a situation. A strange smell hits Julius, and he screams in panic, telling them to get away from him immediately. The girls start sniffing his hair, one of them praises her sister, and the man yells at them to stop. One of them leans in and says this is his reward for returning, telling him to enjoy it. Julius asks for a minute, shouting that he cannot take it anymore. The girl laughs, tells him he always ruins everything, and asks why his stomach is growling. Suggesting breakfast, she refuses to let her husband go hungry. The girl asks her sister to bring some elven water. With the girls distracted, Julius runs out of the room, thinking it had been very close. The girls appear at the door and promise they will not let him get away next time. Julius collapses onto the bed. Apologizing for not waking him, the girl says she had prepared a festive meal, but he slept so soundly she did not dare disturb him. Ulai raves about how delicious it is. One sister is glad he liked it, and the other says her sister trained for a long time. One sister says she needs to look up information in a book. Her sister says she has already researched a strange soil called conkle. Julius reads in a book about a liquid that hardens instantly and can seal a frozen leak when applied. One sister orders him to do it, and he refuses outright, saying it is unnecessary. Nea, a small golem, appears and says he's ready to work, and Julius panics and tells him to be quiet while his sister keeps teasing him. Julius orders Nea the golem to search the street for coins. His sister is disappointed by the harsh command, but Nea agrees immediately. Julius notes he has never seen a golem this intelligent, and remembers that the labyrinths sometimes yield rare artifacts. One sister says Nea is kind because he helped her hang the laundry. The other thinks he looks like a little fairy. Julius thinks golems like that are very rare, while his sister scolds him for giving Nea a terrible order. One sister asks you to tell her his plans for today. He shyly says he would like to rest. His sister smiles and invites him to go shopping with them, which surprises him greatly. Yuli asks whether they'll share the details. A sister tells him to wait a bit and see it for himself. A boy says he has a bad feeling. A girl smiles and says he'll be glad, and another person confidently says he'll like it. Julius notices the sisters are acting strangely. After what happened this morning, Julius knows he cannot let his guard down. He wants to pick up the ingredients for the cocktail while they're in town. Cain offers to handle it, but Julius insists it's his job and wants to do it perfectly. Trent materials and earth crystal. According to her, materials from the trends will be fine, but there may not be enough of the earth crystal on the market. The girls talk about digging a new labyrinth, and Julius agrees, but says importing it would take too long. While Julius thinks how much easier it would be to dig out labyrinths, they come to the store. Elf Amina, the shop owner, greets the princesses warmly and invites them inside. She says everything is ready, though the dress is still unfinished, and Julia is surprised that a veil was mentioned. Dressed in wedding attire, the sisters ask Julius if their appearance interests him, but he cannot say a word. One sister teases him, saying he loves looking at her so much. Julius panics and shouts for them to wait. Stunned, Yuli realizes his sisters are standing before him in real wedding dresses. He knows they lured him here to hint at it, and he is too embarrassed to look at them. The sisters smile at him, and Julius, unable to hold back, calls out that they are too cute. Cain keeps teasing, urging him not to hold back, while Julius tries to calm her but fails. Finally, he agrees, suggests they shop next time, and asks what else they need. Cain says goodbye and asks her to take care of things. Julius asks where they are going next. She announces their next stop is a date, and Julius is stunned. Cain smiles and asks whether it counts as a date since he is dating Mabel. Sierra looks sheepish and suggests they leave. She clarifies she is not the city leader's biological child, like Mabel and Sally. The girl says the mayor often helps orphans and takes them in, and Julius asks the other girl where she is from, but she does not know. When the boy asks why she is called a princess, she admits she is not sure and says the elders call her that because she might be from a certain tribe. Sierra says she was named that because she resembles the queen who ruled this country when it was green. When the girl asks Yuli to tell her about himself, he says his parents abandoned him, he grew up in an orphanage, and then a master took him in and trained him to be a magician. She asks if he's ever dated anyone. Embarrassed, he says he only dates guys and chokes on his drink. The girl asks him if he has anyone, and he says he has no one. When she suddenly asks you what he thinks about marriage, he says he does not know, and that for them it will probably be a political decision. Sierra wonders whether humans are like that and says nobles behave that way, but he is only a commoner. She asks sadly whether he dislikes her, and Yuli sheepishly says it's not like that, but she insists it is about feelings. Turning away, she says quietly that she does not want a wedding decided by her parents. Sierra looks at him and tells him directly that she is happy with him. Deeply embarrassed, Julius cannot speak and looks away from her directness. Nia the golem suddenly returns and reports he collected many coins. Julius praises him. Julius happily praises Nia, saying he is a good boy. Deciding it is time to go home, he feels he cannot make up his mind. One advisor is outraged that Julius's explanation for Lake Mac's disappearance is complete nonsense. According to him, they could not find the reason, and one man decided everything, while another advisor approaches him about not knowing Julius's name. The elder reminds them of the desert merchant and now allows him to speak. The old man walks to the table, picks up the bag, and calls out to Julius. Arriving at the Adventurers Guild, they are greeted by the leader Gilliam with a wide smile. Julius looks puzzled when Gilliam asks him to call him simply Gilly and lays a hand on his shoulder. The boy asks if they have earth crystals. Gilly asks why he needs them, and Julia says it's a secret. Gilly regrets that they are out of earth crystals. The other explains the guild is new and that they urgently needed to collect materials for potions. Now is the time to consider exporting potions, the man says, and Julius agrees. The elder seizes the opportunity and begins coordinating transport routes with the merchant guilds. Julius asks for more materials, saying he has a secret weapon to excavate the labyrinth. Smiling, the hero says they will dig up an earth and a labyrinth, and the sisters are shocked by such recklessness. Cain reminds them that last time a lake hemmed them in, and the desert is far too vast. Julius smiles and scratches Mabel's cat behind the ear, telling Mabel she shouldn't do that. Though the sisters are impressed by her dexterity, Julius says there is no need to worry because he has a plan. He takes out a silver guiding hand. Sierra, surprised, asks what it is. Julius explains that with this staff one can find the labyrinth buried deep underground. Suggesting they split up, the young man says he will take Tio to find the labyrinth. Julius says it's a beautiful day, as he and Tia ride a camel across the endless desert. The girl says sandstorms are rare in this country, and Julius replies that it is always sunny here. Julius, blushing, admits he feels a little nervous after their last date. Panicking, he feels lost and doesn't know where to look. Embarrassed, the hero admits he feels reactions in his lower body and asks others not to think about it. Tia says he'll have to bathe. When he asks why she thinks he likes baths, she says he takes one every morning. Julius panics, realizes she was spying on him, and tries to justify himself by saying her hair was wet, so he thought that explained it. She thanks him for the compliment, and he panics and yells at her to forget everything when he realizes it was a bad idea. He can't stop thinking about it. Tia notices the wand's tip is pointing in a particular direction. Julia says they've found the labyrinth. He asks her to step back so he can try to break through the entrance. She is worried, but he reassures her that he has everything under control, though inside he fears he may not be able to handle it. He strikes the ground hard, causing a massive explosion that opens a deeper passage. They find a labyrinth, but it won't help. Tia says the door is too far away, so they'll have to look elsewhere. The girl says she felt very worried when he went alone to his wife to save her. He thanks her, but she says she returned on her own, not because she was kidnapped. The hero says they are like family to him. Her face lights up at the words. Suddenly, they notice Mabel. Mabel finds what they were searching for. They discover the entrance to another labyrinth, and Julius suggests they rest while they can. With a sly smile, he says they will now conquer this labyrinth. His determination frightens the girls. One says her feet are already getting cold, and the other says this side of him unnerves her. Julius says an earthen labyrinth is common in Zake and wonders whether the climate affects it. Tia tells him to be more careful, but Julius says he's just used to it. After all, he was a court magician. He remembers being sent hundreds of times to earn money under the pretext of training in the labyrinths. A turtle with a huge gem on its shell catches the hero's eye, and Julius notes its quick reaction. A destroyer turtle explodes when attacked, as described. Julius sees the turtle start to glow and warns everyone it is self-destructing and will explode in a few seconds. The sisters are frightened by the unexpected monster, but Julius reassures them that it is a very rare species. Julius says the labyrinth would be easier if only monsters like this were here, and he's right. He warns that many places here are traps. Then a sister steps on a slab and a hole opens beneath her. They fall into a trap, the House of Monsters, where many enemies will now emerge. Giant bats, earth golems, and rat men surround the sisters, who do not understand why so many have gathered. Sierra attacks, but her strikes have no effect on the golems, and she shouts that they need to assess the situation. Cain creates a wall of fire that burns the golems and watches with pleasure how funny they look as they burn. Mabel screams in horror when she sees a rat, and Tia wonders what makes the cat so afraid of mice. After overcoming her fear, the girl says firmly she will do it. Julius says he is the #1 adventurer in Shambhala and will see it through to the end, inspiring everyone to fight. They get past the trap, and Julius remarks on their excellent teamwork while asking whether they are getting used to the dungeon. The sisters shout together that they won't get used to this. Yuli smiles and says he'll have to anyway. Tia asks if Mabel is okay, and Mabel says she's fine and will be right back. The hero reaches large doors that apparently lead to the boss's room. Julius says this is unexpected, and Tia calls the maze the Jeweled Turtle Labyrinth. A massive turtle with a giant gem set in its shell appears before them, and they stare in disbelief. The Ruin Royal Turtle is a special species that rarely evolves because it must gather magical ore. Julius fears an explosion will collapse the labyrinth, and Tia reassures him that no labyrinth has ever been destroyed by an explosion. Tia says they'd be better off dying under the rubble than fighting, but Julius suggests they try to defeat the turtle. Julius says it's a man's natural need to defeat a monster like that, and Mabel says that as an adventurer, she knows better. The hero says he can handle her with magic and suggests coming back later. Tia panics and screams at him not to do it. All the sisters say you should be prepared for anything because unforeseen circumstances may arise. He decides he will put a magical shield on the turtle if it explodes. Julius charges forward, shouting that he badly wants to defeat this turtle. When the turtle starts to glow, he realizes it is very dangerous. Tia screams that it's not safe, then her legs suddenly get stuck and Sierra panics that they're all going to die. Julia says that even though she's big, they're all the same, and she prepares to use his magic. Summoning a massive block of ice, he slams it onto the turtle and freezes it solid. Grinning, the hero stands in a safe spot and tells the turtle to go ahead and explode. Mabel watches the screens in horror, realizing an explosion is inevitable. Mabel scolds Julius for not warning them about the explosion. Julius apologizes, and the sisters are still confused. One sister says she can't move her legs. Julius asks Mabel for help because they are closer to the epicenter than he expected. He offers to treat them to a nice dinner, but Tia yells at him to help them get out of here. Julius raises a powerful barrier with his magic to shield everyone from the debris. Mabel shouts with joy that they're alive. Julius says calmly that he told them they would not die here. In the cave, they find many earth crystals, and Tia asks her sister if she is okay, but her sister still can't feel her legs. Julie examines her legs and realizes it's petrification poison, unable to believe this is possible. We might remember seeing a strange rat. She apologizes, thinking it was her fault, and Julius reassures her. Tia asks about a fever reducer, but Mabel says she has none, and the girl says they have an elixir. Sister says she already tried the elixir, but it has no effect on petrification. Julius is stunned that the elixir failed, having been so caught up in the fight that he didn't notice what happened. Tia tears in her eyes, begs Julius to save her sister, saying that at this rate she will die in a few hours. The injured sister says she's ready and asks Mabel not to give up, though she doesn't want to lose her. Mabel asks how she can help. Julius says there is only one way to get her to the workshop. He explains that a book describes the cure for petrification, and if he can transfer it, he will be able to prepare it. Tia tears in her eyes, agrees that she also cannot imagine life without her sister. Julius vows to save her sister and says they will meet in their workshop. Pulling Tia into a tight hug, he vows he will not let her sister die and will take care of her. Carrying her on his back, he hears the girl quietly call his name and asks what is happening. Julius asks her not to talk too much, saying it would be very painful for him if she died. Sierra says he's not surprised by a war over resources, and he replies that where there's wealth, there is war. The girl admits it's her fault. After probing his past, he still went into the labyrinth unprepared. She fears that if anything happens to her, Mabel will hate him, but he says grief can change anyone. The girl asks him to save her sister, and he promises he will definitely save her, but only with her and only like this. Yulia is stunned that the woman knows his thoughts. The woman says she sees everything in him, that his name used to be Yuri, and that he was kind. He shouts that this is madness because it's a mind meld and asks if it's legal. Julius panics, felt memories of her rush into his mind. A vivid image of a beautiful girl rises in his memories, a true princess of Shambhala. In ancient times, the Maharoba dynasty united all the elves of the world. A single queen guided the dynasty into 1,000 years of lasting peace and calm. Legend says this great dynasty fell overnight. Centuries later, the last of the great ancestors was born, the 1,000-year-old queen of Zonikin. Smiling, the girl says her name is Sheila Zona Kanatnes and turns to the parents. Named after her ancestors and nicknamed princess by her family as a child, she eventually lost her happiness. After her father lost the power struggle, they are at a loss because they are not respected as a queen. When she was 4, her father entered her room while she looked at a portrait. Her father, his face showing both sadness and determination, told her to listen carefully. He said he and his mother had to leave this place and go far away. The girl asks where they are going. The father replies that the journey is too difficult to take her along. He announces that Shambhala will protect her from now on, and they leave her with the city mayor. She asks how long this will last, and her parents tell her they will come for her once they find the missing queen. The mother says it could take 5, 10, or even 100 years. Crying, the girl runs after them, begging them not to leave and to take her with them, but her parents tell her they are very sorry. Yuli reels at the memory and can't understand how anyone could forget such an important event. This is a childhood memory, he says, because he was abandoned at birth. He remembers a hooded woman who left him at the shelter door. He looks at the woman and quietly says "Mom," but she walks away without looking back. Julia says this place even brings back forgotten memories. Turning away, he says he doesn't want to see it again. The girl says her legs are growing heavy and the petrification is spreading fast. Julius promises he will cure her soon. After thanking him, she passes out, and Julius panics, not knowing what is happening. Confident he would help Shambhala, the girl says she knew he would, is glad she chose him, and disappears into the portal. She asks him to save Shambhala for her sake, and when he holds her, she faints in his arms. She confesses she loves him more than anyone in the world, and holding her close, he vows he will not let her die.